about emotional connection, to clinicians, and whether it's one of the variables kind of contributing to the benefits of massage, right? To the benefits that massage provides to people. That leads to the next kind of a little chapter of our conversation, because a big part of your research is actually dedicated to social and emotional mediated touch, right? To understanding how we perceive different emotions through touch. And specifically, a couple of your studies were dedicated to categorizing emotional touch gestures and basically figuring out the standard variables that contribute to each emotional gesture. And by standard variables, I mean velocity, indentation, also placement on the body, etc. Would you be able to talk a bit about these studies, what you have done, what you found, and how can we harness our emotions through maybe mediated touch now, not just real touch, but mediated touch?
Yeah, so I think of it as there's discriminative touch, which I would put some of the compliance tasks into. And discriminative touch maybe involve manipulation of objects, determining, like with the avocado, different compliances and stuff like that. Then there's affective touch, and then there's maybe pain associated with touch as well. And in affective touch, I've been working, recently with Håkan Olausson, Sarah McIntyre, Sadnagi of Linköping, Sweden. And we've kind of flipped the paradigm of what I've been doing in my lab. So everything that I've always done has been we control the stimulus in every way and do a traditional experiment where we control the force, we control the displacement, we control the contact area and so forth. And then in controlled experiments, you vary one factor after another. So we then, 1 Newton, now 2 Newtons, now 3 Newtons of force. With affective touch that we've been looking into, we've tried to take a different approach where we allow one person to touch another person and they can do whatever they want to do. And if they want to tap, they tap. If they want to move in a lateral direction, they move in a lateral direction. And then what we're trying to do is back out what happened in terms of the physics of contact and understand why we're different people employing different individual differences in terms of these contact interactions, and what were they trying to convey by those, and how did the recipient perceive those little differences. So to me, it's like quite a bit of a paradigm shift, because now nothing's controlled anymore. And we try to, and we're basically using machine learning techniques to try to figure out what happens and how does that tie to psychophysical responses. And you have to set up the experiments in kind of clever ways. And also, how do those contact interactions lead to the firing properties of particular afferents? And where the group in Sweden is doing single unit microneurography in humans in those cases. So what we found, in the psychophysics part is basically that when we look at the skin and we look at one person touching another, we see that people make subtle changes in how they contact others. And those subtle changes in how they make contact influence a receiver's perception of valence and arousal, emotional connotations of percepts. They're really small. So there's very small changes in how you contact someone, how you remove contact, how long you remain in contact for. But that tells the receiver a lot, actually, about your intention and how much you really care. Just like when you have a conversation with someone and they stick around and they talk to you, or maybe they make better eye contact with you, you know that they care a little bit more because of those kind of cues. And I would think that's kind of similar to what we're seeing when we're looking at affective touch in these cases.
But basically, and I think that's also the title of your paper, where you say that you basically quantified social touch in a way, right?
Right.
Is it even possible? Because that's like, wow, right? Because there's a lot of notion that emotions are so, custom in a way and cultural dependent and all that stuff. So far like that, but now we are more standardized than we think.
Yeah. So, the paper with Sarah McIntyre, what it showed was that with these 8 emotions that we took a look at that people were trying to convey to each other, there's some pretty strong similarities in how different people are conveying the same thing. It's not exactly the same. There's certainly cultural differences. There's certainly individual differences, but there's some commonality that's shared between those expressions that we can sort of customize. So like, for example, when you do a happiness emotion, you're like a little more joyful with how you're moving your hands across the other person. Trying to convey a sense of calming, you are moving really slowly in a lateral way across another person. When you're conveying sadness, your hand is on that other person for a period of time, kind of stationary, that fashion. And I don't think I was ever taught to do those things. Maybe I
But
saw.
yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but you talked about sadness, and I think I remember that in that paper you mentioned that I think sadness and love, they're kind of expressed in a similar way,
Yeah,
right?
yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah,
Okay, that's very interesting, right? So these are like very, you would say, opposite emotions. I mean, depends on type of love, I assume, but you
yeah.
would think love is something positive, right? Not sad, I mean, initially, but they're so similar. That's pretty interesting, I would say.
In many regards, those two are, and not along all of the physical dimensions that we were tracking, but they're similar to each other and on many of them actually. And I think those are, I mean, maybe it's because those are very deeply held emotions that we're revealing to another, or maybe we resonate with the other person when we're delivering them more than, some of the other ones that we evaluated were things like gratitude. And I don't think that there's quite the emotional connotation associated with gratitude as there is with love, or there is with sadness, or even with calming. So I think more work is needed to understand those two for sure and their associations.
But still, since you're already able to kind of somewhat quantify and categorize, right, specific parameters, right, as such as velocity, indentation, etc., and map those to a specific emotion, right? I assume some, haptic designers could probably take this knowledge and apply it when designing some actuation technique. What do you think about that?
I think that that could be done. I have to say, I'm slightly concerned about that, actually.
Why?
I'm not sure we want to convey emotions from a distance.
That's
Or
an interesting point. Tell me more.
I think that there's a move now towards AI and more machines kind of in our lives. And I can imagine if you could quantify those emotions, you could start off maybe where it's kind of like a telephone and it's still you speaking and it's still the other person listening. And there's something in between that's doing the transmission of the data. But I'm nervous that one of those people gets replaced at one point, and I'm not sure if that's good or not.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are so many, right? There are so many ways to look at it, right? We could also think about, I know, care homes, right? People who are in need of,
Yes.
human connection without having the human right on the other side, or also like intensive care for premature babies. I mean, there are some medical cases, more like medical cases. But yeah, this element of social, emotional touch on daily basis, it's something, yeah, something of a philosophical discussion moving forward.
Yeah, those cases you mentioned, absolutely. I think we could, I could imagine a scenario where you've got babies in a neonatal intensive care unit and they need touch and there's issues with safety. And I could also imagine the other case you're talking about, that other use case with an older person. But I'm nervous about, then are we not going to visit our grandparents anymore in person? I'm not saying it's bad per se, but I'm saying it does seem like there's a need for an ethical understanding of what are we doing exactly in that area.
ideally ethical development should happen simultaneously, right? Already now.
Yep.
But as always, it happens kind of post factum. Well, hopefully, we'll hope the best. But right now we are more discussing into what is possible, right?
Yes,
I
absolutely.
hope only good people are listening to us with good intentions.